The hook I'm working on today is inspired by one that I saw in a gallery in Taos, New Mexico. It was smaller than this one, a little bit simpler. Got a little carried away on this hook, but it was a lot of fun, kind of a challenge to get all the scrolls to come out looking close to the same, even though there's no way they're all exactly the same. So let's get to work on this ornate scroll hook made from 1/8 by 1.5, piece about 13 inches long. Using a piece of string or flexible wire can really help get the exact length of any kind of a scroll or other curved object. Now my overall proportions for this are going to be different than the original. I did not take measurements on it, just trying to get the feel of that original hook in the gallery. I'm going to do most of this by cutting the material in a little porta-band saw. I think that's the most straightforward way to do this. You could certainly do it with a chisel if you'd rather, or even a hacksaw if you can follow a straight line for this distance. The originally definitely looks like it was cut with a saw and not with a chisel. This is certainly awkward to try and bend these and draw out these little scroll ends. It might have been easier to file or grind those in right at the beginning. But with all the cuts being done on the bandsaw, I thought this deserved a little bit more forge work. As I start scrolling these up, the outer ones will be out of my way, and it should get a little bit easier. This material is so thin that you do a lot of this shaping cold. I don't know if you'd want to do the entire thing cold or not, but I'm not worried about it if it starts getting down into a black heat. It would certainly be possible to do this entire thing just working the scrolls at the anvil, but it's a little bit faster and more efficient if you use some sort of scrolling pliers, scroll forks, something of that sort. This approach, bending the part that I'm not working on out of my way and leaving the part I am working on in line, is a lot easier to work with. So this is a better way to go. I'm going to let that cool while I take a little lunch break, and then we'll get to work on the other end. Well, that didn't take too long, and this is cool enough to pick up and hold now. Pretty happy with the way this is going. It's definitely going to be a much larger scale than that original was. That's okay. I'm not really trying to copy the original. I'm being inspired by the original. And if I want to make it smaller, I can always take what I've learned from this piece and downsize it. But this is a great opportunity to just look at and examine your work. Do you like where it's going? Maybe you see someplace you could take this that isn't what you originally saw in your head. It could still be a hook, but maybe there's something you want to change about it. For me, as far as a hook goes, I think I'm still going where I originally saw this. I plan to more or less duplicate what we've done on the upper end. On the lower end, except where we split and scrolled this last section, that will get forged into a hook. So we're going to have to turn this around and do that layout. But what else could you learn from this if you stop to examine it? Well, the hook is going to go in this configuration. But what if you turn it sideways? I'm seeing in my mind the finial for a door hinge. I think this would make a wonderful looking hinge. I don't know if I would skinny the strap down and let it taper, what I would do at the strap. Still need to think on that idea. But I really did need a good idea for some door hinges that would go on a door for this opening. This has had a door on it, but the other day this door just completely fell off the hinges, pulled the screws right out of the cheap particle board core of the door. It was an older door. It's been hanging here for about 14 years, and it never really quite fit the character of the rest of the shop. On this same trip down to Taos, we visited another gallery, and they had a pair of side-by-side doors in an outdoor opening, and I really kind of liked those doors, so I think I'm going to use those as an inspiration to build a door for this. And then we'll make a set of hinges that are going to look a lot like this, use this same kind of detail, and that way I can get a much more interesting looking door on here, and not only get to make the hardware, but I get to build the door too, so that's going to be a fun project. Might be several months down the road before I get to it, but we will get to that. But right now I need to go lay out and cut the other end of this so we can finish our hook. I'm going to give myself an inch between the cuts on these outside scrolls and then use the same layout. So that's 6 inches from the very end and 2 inches between the ends of the cuts. Looks like I'm getting a little blade drift on this portaband. Time for a fresh blade. Well, even though no two of these scrolls looks exactly the same, which tells me I need to spend a lot more time practicing scrolls, and something like this is really good practice for trying to get scrolls right, especially these little scrolls. Anyways, I'm still pretty happy with it, and this is a little bit more ornate than that original was. It's certainly a lot bigger than the original was, and I could probably leave well enough alone at this point, put some holes in it, it would be ready to go. But since I've already taken extra time to make this extra complicated, let's jazz it up just a little bit more. I want to put some chisel lines connecting the ends of the cuts. I don't want to cut all the way through. I just want to incise a line in there so that those cuts flow from one end to the other. And I think that's going to make it look better. I may even do some other little decorative elements, just kind of see where this takes me. I'll probably do most of this under the treadle hammer because that's the easiest way to do a good job. But you can do it with the anvil if you like. I think there's still enough heat left in the gas forge to get this hot enough to put some wax on it. Now, in general, a hook is a fairly simple project, but you can take that simple idea and turn it into something exceptional, something really special by putting some extra work into it. And today's project is certainly an example of that. There's a whole lot of extra work. I don't know how many heats were in this, dozens and dozens of heats, because it cooled off so fast. Maybe I'd work for 15 or 20 seconds, back in the fire for 30 seconds, work for another 15 or 20 seconds. So it was a lot of back and forth. I've probably got about 4 or 5 hours in this hook, but that includes messing around with the camera. So maybe I could do one of these in a couple of hours. Not sure if this would ever be a profitable thing to sell, although I may try to make some more just to see if I can get that time down and see if they are saleable, because I kind of like this scrolly hook. It's a nice fancy hook, Spanish colonial style or northern New Mexico style ironwork. Fairly lightweight, fairly delicate. Historically in northern New Mexico, materials would have been hard to come by. It was not a major industrial area, so blacksmiths had to be a little bit more frugal, but they could put the time into making something a little bit more ornate, even if the materials are fairly light and delicate. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this does illustrate that I need more practice doing scrolls. So if I do more of these, that would be good practice. And some of this, if you get these really even, when you cut them out, you could probably do cold. One of the problems getting a scroll even is material that changes thickness, and it has thick and thin spots throughout the scroll. If it has an even taper, thin at the end, getting thicker by the time it gets to its base, it's going to bend more evenly. The other issue is an even heat. And as this thing cools off fast, it's cooling off more wherever the tools are in contact with it, and therefore it is not keeping an even heat. Room temperature is an even heat. It doesn't change while you're working on it. So if you can do something like this cold, you might get better results, but if there's thick and thin spots, that's still going to cause you a problem. So getting this cut out perfectly even would be really important for making these more efficiently. Actually, in my eyes, the irregularity is part of what makes this special. It's part of what gives forge work the life and the character that it has. So you don't want it to be perfect. You don't want it all cut out by a computer. Just a reminder that channel members get early access to the videos here at Black Bear Forge, and Patreon patrons not only get early access, but they get an ad-free version of the video. So if you don't like the annoying ads that you see here on YouTube, maybe Patreon is worth checking out. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you have time in your day to get out to your shop, make something, but stay safe, wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next one.